For as small as communities go, Little Compton in Rhode Island is the perfect representation of this. With a population of 3,500, the coastal town in Newport County is a relatively safe place to reside. It was therefore such horror in 1999 when the town woke up to a gruesome murder. In fact, the act was so heinous that the detectives had to control themselves from throwing up on the scene. Hello. Today I share the details of the violent death of a beloved widow and how the investigation riled up unusual suspects. After all, even little towns have their secrets. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. 66-year-old Angela Spence-Shaw worked as a gardener in a local greenhouse. She had immigrated to the USA from Great Britain with her first husband. Soon after, the man perished, but Angela later remarried. The second husband suffered the same fate. Wanting a break, Angela relocated to Little Compton with her 2 sons and integrated herself into the community. On this particular day, Angela does not show up for work. Since this is unlike her, the manager dispatches a colleague to check in on Angela just in case something is wrong. The colleague gets to Angela's house and starts calling out. She finds that the door is unlocked, so she goes in. The house appears undisturbed, so the colleague continues calling out while walking toward Angela's bedroom. She also checks all the rooms, just in case Angela collapsed or something. Nothing prepares her for the horror that awaits her in the bathroom on the 2nd floor of the house. Angela's body is submerged in the bathtub and a lot of blood decorates the scene. It is clear that Angela Spence-Shaw is dead, but is it a homicide or an accident? Lieutenant Stephen Lynch is spending the holiday weekend with his family when he gets the call. He has a team of detectives that he is supervising, so while he knows that the scene will be secured effectively, he also knows that none of his team members are equipped to handle a murder. This is because the last homicide that the town had recorded had been over 30 years ago. Lynch gets to the site where his colleague, Detective Sid Werdell, briefs him on what is happening so far. Due to the intensity of the case, Lynch has called the Rhode Island State Police Department to help with the case. Detectives Nicholas Terra and Stephen Bannon arrive at the crime scene shortly. The first thing that the detectives note is that the house is under major reconstruction. The victim is in the 2nd floor bathroom, partially submerged in the bathtub. At this point, some speculate that the victim slipped and hit her head. This notion is quickly disputed when the detectives enter the bedroom. There is a large amount of blood evidence in the bedroom on the bed, carpets, and bedding. Some of the bed linen is missing. However, the victim's purse is undisturbed, so the $500 in her purse is still there. Clearly, this was not a burglary gone wrong. The assailant came with the intent to kill, but the detectives have no idea how dark people can be. The medical team arrives and retrieves the body from the tub. The detectives finally take a look at Angela. Her face has been so horribly disfigured that her colleagues have a hard time determining whether that is their Angela. There is a hairdryer in the tub, meaning that Angela had been electrocuted. The assailant wanted this to look like accidental electrocution, but the vicious nature of Angela's bruises reveals that the detectives are not just looking for a killer but a sociopath. The next step of the investigation is telling the family the horrific news and interviewing them to learn a little about Angela's history. Angela is revealed to be a kind woman who loved life and respected others. The first break in the case comes from the medical examiner's office. There is evidence that Angela had been assaulted sexually, and the team has retrieved seminal fluid from her body. Lynch sees to it that the semen is well preserved since, at this point, DNA analysis has been in the works for 10 years. This also means that the detectives can now create their list of suspects by looking at any sex offenders nearby. Patrick Zimmerman is termed a violent sex offender, and he had served time for his crimes. When the detectives approach him at his house, Zimmerman requests to do the meeting elsewhere as his wife is coming home soon. This shows that he has not related his past crimes to his present family. He agrees to account for his activities on the night of the murder and to a blood sample. The DNA tests do not match, so Zimmerman is eliminated as a suspect. The detectives and other officers sit down to compare notes. One of them mentions that if the notion once a killer goes, then the detectives should question the last man who had committed a homicide. Stanley had been obsessed with a babysitter way back in 1965. He had approached the girl one night and offered her a ride, but she refused. Angry, Stanley picked up a piece of rock and hit the girl's head, instantly killing her. The detectives go to Stanley's parents' house, but learn that Stanley isn't there. However, he was in town a few days before, around the time of the murder. This is enough for the detectives to order a search for Stanley. Soon, the autopsy reports come in. The cause of death is blunt force trauma and drowning. The body had been electrocuted too. What shocks the medical examiner is that Angela's organs like the spleen and liver are ruptured. For that to happen, the assailant must have jumped up and down on the poor woman like a kid on a trampoline. If Stanley is the killer, then he has to be caught before another person suffers the same fate. The Violent Fugitives unit is brought in, and they manage to locate Stanley. Stanley says that on that particular day, he was at home reading a book and that he has changed. He takes a polygraph test and passes, and his blood sample is not a match, so he is let free. The detectives decide that it is time to re-examine the crime scene and see what they missed. Lynch discovers that a door had been cut on the back of the property, and what separated the inside of the house from the outside was just a tarp. This means that anyone could have walked into the house and that there would be no evidence of a break-in. Lynch dispatches a few officers to do a neighborhood canvass. They learn that Angela's house has been in construction for 3 months and the project is spearheaded by a local construction company. The company has 30 people, so all of them are now suspects. Fortunately, the detectives decide to look into the 2 men who had cut the door, Kelvin Moore and Jeremy Motyka. Kelvin claims that he was at his girlfriend's house, and his alibi checks out. Jeremy mentions that he had gone home and spent the night drinking with his teenage neighbors. The next morning, he had gone to his girlfriend's place. The detectives call in Jeremy's girlfriend to collaborate on the story. She mentions that Jeremy drove up at around 8 or 9 in the morning. He was so hungover that he spent the day vomiting and sleeping. Lynch wonders why Jeremy omitted that account from his statement. He has some officers pull a background search on Jeremy, and lo and behold, Jeremy had been arrested for assault and kidnapping. Jeremy is called to the station again for the second interview. He says that he had stopped at a bar on the way home. He had also ordered pizza that night. Unfortunately, the pizza place confirms that Jeremy had ordered the pizza the night before the homicide. If Jeremy had been drinking with the kids until midnight and drove up to see his girlfriend the next morning, then there are more than 6 hours in Jeremy's life that are unaccounted for. As the officers deliberate on their next move, they get a call from Kelvin, Jeremy's partner in the construction company. He says that Jeremy has been acting erratic and overexcited. He kept saying that the police wanted to pin the murder on him because of his prior record. Kelvin tells him to keep still since he was never in the upstairs bathroom. Jeremy mentions that he had been using the bathroom, and Kelvin knows this to be a lie. He also mentions that the police are looking into boot marks. Soon, he overhears Jeremy telling his girlfriend to take some boots from his hose and drive them up to her parents' house. The detectives quickly call Jeremy's girlfriend, and she confirms that Jeremy is acting suspiciously. The only thing that can tie Jeremy to the crime is the seminal fluid retracted. Therefore, the detectives ask if they can get a blood sample from Jeremy. Jeremy appears as cool as a cucumber, and he agrees to it. The blood sample is a match to the DNA obtained from Angela's body. An arrest warrant is quickly processed, and Jeremy Motyka is charged with first-degree murder and first-degree sexual assault. When questioned, Jeremy denies everything. He claims that his semen was found because sometimes in the morning after having sex with his girlfriend, he would wash off in Angela's tub. While the detectives never got the why, they could speculate on the how. Jeremy had seen Angela around and figured that she was a good target for his use. On that day, he had started drinking early, so by midnight he was very intoxicated. He had driven back to Little Compton and entered Angela's house. He had attacked the sleeping woman, brutally beat her up, and assaulted her. He had jumped up and down on the body before dragging her to the bathtub. The reason for this is that he expected his sins to be washed away. He had dropped the hairdryer so that someone would mistake the crime as accidental. He had driven up to his girlfriend, and the reason he vomited wasn't because of the alcohol, it is because it made him sick to his stomach to see the animal that he could be. Jeremy Motyka was found guilty of the charge of first-degree murder and first-degree sexual assault and sentenced to life without parole. Justice was finally served for Angela and her family, and this case closed. Our thoughts and prayers go to those who suffered under the hands of this particular man. If you want to watch more true crime documentaries, then click any video of them. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for great content and enjoy more. See you soon.